I recently played 16 Resident Evil games and I decided to rank them all. The list includes the remakes, original number titles, Code Veronica, and 2 Revelations games. The original Resident Evil from 1996 isn't included. All games were played on a Linux PC running Cashy OS. I used Dolphin to play the GameCube version of Code Veronica X. Also, the only reason I didn't play the original Resident Evil is that I read in many places that the remake is a very solid substitute. I will talk about each game on the same order I played them. And with that, Resident Evil Remake is the first game I played. Obviously, as the first one, I suffered a bit with the puzzles and mechanics, but it really was a great introduction to the series. Resident Evil 1 has a great atmosphere, intriguing story, and remarkable level design. The gameplay loop of solving puzzles you encountered a while ago with new key items works incredibly well to this day. Same with opening new shortcuts through the areas. The only aspect I feel hasn't aged that well is the combat. It's certainly not bad, and I don't really know if there's a better system for fixed camera angles. But I have to say that it's the least appealing part of the game for me. Of course, at the end of the day, the combat's more about resource management than anything else. There's plenty to like about this entry. It works very well on modern systems and looks very decent. The mansion is iconic, and the new content added by the remake is so well integrated that I had no idea it wasn't there from the start. Without many positives, I have to say that I will place this game on A. To me, it doesn't deserve an S, as I don't feel like it's very replayable based on my tastes. I also think that the cutscenes and character interactions are a bit too goofy, too often to take seriously, even if the game does a great job with the files you encounter. They really add a lot to the vibe and tone. So yeah, I will go with A. Next up is RE2 Remake. The survival horror experience that this title offers really is top tier. Each encounter feels properly deadly, the level design is fantastic, each item location feels deliberately planned to keep you engaged and going, but without giving you too many items in your first run. Managing the ink ribbons is also very challenging when you don't know what to expect. This contributes a lot to the experience, as it keeps you constantly thinking if you should use one or risk losing progress. Additionally, in replays, you instead try to use as few ribbons as possible to keep each save more and more optimized. Another important part of this game is graphics. Even so many years later, the game looks beautiful and very realistic. This is important as it makes the immersion much easier. Personally, I find it hard to take a horror game seriously if the graphics aren't good or stylistic enough. The guns are also a highlight. They also feel appropriately weighty and impactful. Sure, you need many shots to down a zombie with a simple pistol, but the shotgun and the grenade launcher make up for that. Overall, I think that this entry really captures what's great about Resident Evil. Iconic areas, charismatic characters, fun puzzles, cool guns, nerve-wracking horror, and when Mr. X shows up, it's pure terror and urgency. I have to say that this is my favorite Resident Evil game. I wouldn't have issues giving it a 10 out of 10 if the second run scenario wasn't so rushed, and it was more like the original game. Also, if the bosses weren't so boring. There was never a time during my 3 runs that I felt excited to fight a boss. Being my favorite, there's nowhere else to go but at the top of rank S. Before I get too used to good games, we'll talk about a bad one right now. Resident Evil 3 Remake is the black sheep of the remake era, and for good reason. After playing Resident Evil 2, I was expecting more of that. Instead, we have an action shooter that seemingly focuses our resources into boss fights. The exploration isn't as interesting, the areas are short, linear, and the better ones are all during Carlos's sections. I would say that the game looks fantastic. It's a great depiction of the apocalypse that was Raccoon City. But you barely have time to appreciate that, as the game feels really fast-paced and urgent. Sure, to an extent that's how it's supposed to be, it's an urgent situation and you can't really afford to look around to admire the scenario too much. But the original game still had interesting areas and the exploration felt satisfying. Much like the original, the game has a dodge mechanic. And not much like the original, the dodge actually works well. Consequently, the boss fights felt like a weird Resident Evil Dark Souls hybrid, where you use iframes to dodge attacks and then punish the enemy with the assisted aim it gives you. As I said, the focus really went into the boss fights, which are much better than Resident Evil 2 Remake, but they still aren't interesting enough to me. Even if they were, I would have liked a game where survival horror and exploration was the focus. This game suffers even more when you compare it to the original. Many areas were cut and shortened. There are barely any interesting puzzles, and all in all, I would just say that this game is very forgettable. Also, I played on hardcore, and it is a letdown. You don't even need ink ribbons to save, and it doesn't change much the way you play it. In contrast, Resident Evil 2 where it really enhances the experience. I will give this one a C. It's not the worst game ever, but it's a downgrade over the original and gets demolished when you compare to Resident Evil 2 Remake. It's not worse because it's at least short and I didn't have to buy this game because it was on my Steam family library. A game that fully deserves its asking price though is RE4 Remake, but still it's often available for a lot less during sales. Yeah, as a reminder, I played this game before playing the original. I really loved everything about it. The guns are fun, the parry mechanics work really well, and it looks gorgeous. RE4 Remake is in many ways better than the original, not counting visuals and other QOL features that are more due to the game being launched almost 20 years after. I believe the main improvements are to the story, characters, and tone of the game. The exploration elements are also better. There is more to do and to see, more merchant missions, and the world feels a lot more lived in and less like a playground. All that said, I will have a lot of good things to say about the original when we get there. Maybe that is because I played on hardcore, but I felt that the difficulty was a lot higher on this title when compared to the previous ones. It's not impossible, and it's very fun, but definitely harder. This has some positives and negatives to me. Playing the game feels different to the chill vibes I liked about the original. It feels a lot more intense and tiring at the same time. It keeps me engaged and the bosses are so much fun that I almost forgot how I'm not supposed to like Resident Evil bosses. This and the original are games that I'm sure I will revisit many times more. I have to say that I think that this is the best action RE game ever made. There's not a lot to the survival horror of it, except for the resource management that I think is also very well executed. The realistic and serious vibes also contribute to that. Still, you are never terrified like in RE2 Remake. This one is an easy yes tier for me. There's really nowhere else to go but there. Resident Evil 5 is a weird title. Many years ago, I only heard bad things said about it. Only RE6 could rival this game as the most hated mainline RE game. Fast forward a couple years, and it seems that this entry is universally praised. I don't really get why. Granted, I played solo, and that was clearly not the intended experience. It's not hard at all. I played on veteran, and the only challenge was keeping Sheva alive. And the Ouroboros boss fight. The one where with the flamethrower, just because there's a glitch on PC while playing at high frame rates that makes it very impossible to kill. It just takes a lot less damage than it's supposed to. I only found out that after spending around an hour trying to kill this thing. I thought I was doing something wrong and decided to look up Reddit. I wasn't. The boss is just bugged. I locked the game to 30 FPS and killed it very quickly. I have said that as a follow-up to RE4, this game has good combat mechanics and feels good to shoot and punch. The QTEs are ass though, especially using keyboard and mouse. I dislike the piss filter. The exploration doesn't feel incredibly rewarding. For more positives, I like the upgrade system, and the guns are also pretty cool. All in all, it's a good game, and yeah, I had a lot of bad things to say about it, but I still had fun. I dislike some of the set pieces like the giant and the segment with the guys riding bikes, but nothing really major to complain about. After playing the original RE4, I had a bit more appreciation towards this one, as I can see why people love this system, especially if they are playing co-op. Still, I wasn't, so I have to rank it at B. It's a high B, but B nonetheless. To keep up the momentum, a game that I also have many bad things to say about. Resident Evil 0 is not great. The usual thing people complain about is the lack of item boxes. I don't mind that as much. My issues with inventory management are more to do with the lack of a proper menu to handle that. Picking up items on the ground and waiting for these low prompts to appear, only to tell you that you don't have enough inventory space, is very annoying. Having the option to drop an item to switch from the one in the ground would have made the system a lot more tolerable. Just trying to get an item on the ground is annoying. Many times I ended up picking up the wrong one. Honestly, just add item boxes that don't share items between them, and that would be a lot better. Moreover, I kinda like the idea behind two protagonists. Unfortunately, what tends to happen is that you end up having a main character and a support one, and that's there more to be a carry meal than anything else. Many times I had all my items with one character, only for it to become unavailable. I can't fault a horror game for not warning me about something, but that doesn't make it less frustrating. This game has cool areas. The train is really interesting and the mansion is pretty cool, despite being kind of a reuse of assets, but not really. It's different enough to the original not bother me. The combat really is basically the same as RE1 Remake, so unremarkable but works well within the camera system. The game looks very pretty, and it didn't have many issues with the difficulty. The only puzzle that really forced me to look up anything was the one with the animals. I had the right idea, but I didn't know where to start, and I decided to give up just because it took too long to complete, only to then find out that my solution was wrong. Apparently the story isn't good. It's a very weird retcon that doesn't really add anything interesting to the series. It just creates more questions in the end. The main one obviously being that Rebecca decides that she should go to the mansion and never tell anyone about what happened yesterday. It's pretty mid, really. I can give this one a C without feeling bad about it. Not horrible, but I'm not likely to play this game again. I guess it's better than Resident Evil 3 Remake. I am likely to play this one again though, and just because there's a co-op, and I will probably play with a friend at some point. Resident Evil 6 is the most hated mainline Resident Evil game. It's easy to see why. The game is very bloated, there are too many explosions and action scenes, the horror is completely absent, the story is confusing at the start, and the inventory system is weird. Still, I have to say that the combat mechanics kept me engaged enough, at least, to play all the campaigns on Veteran without hating life too much. It actually works decently well with keyboard and mouse, and the shooting feels very on point. It's linear as hell, and has a bad habit of putting QTEs everywhere. Also, I had to restart the game at the end of each chapter, otherwise I was guaranteed to crash while playing the next one. I'm not sure if this also happens on Windows. I have to say that I liked this one more than 5, probably only because the partner was immortal. But looking at it after the fact, I gotta say 5 is a better game. It's much more polished and less bloated than this one. The campaigns frankly don't feel different enough for me to go into detail about each one. But just for the record, I think that my list from best to worst goes like this: Jake, Chris, Ada, and Leon. This one goes on B for me. A game that will not go on B is this one. This is by far the game in the series that I have the most neutral opinion on. It's only natural. I barely felt any emotions playing this game. To me it was too easy, the story was too boring, the characters are forgettable and the plot felt like a filler episode. Even the graphics are just okay. The only thing I can say I really liked was the gun upgrade system. More so, I liked the idea of it rather than the execution. It's even hard to talk too much about this one because I don't remember much about it. I really don't understand why so many people praise this game as much as I do. It's easy not to hate it, but it's equally easy to not like it. This game is a C for me. It's very forgettable, and to an extent I would have preferred a game that made me mad, rather than one that had me playing with a poker face at all times. Oh yeah, it had the same crashing issues that Resident Evil 6 had. I can't fault the game for it, as it was not made for Linux. Again, assume that the issue is not present on Windows. After all that, it may come as a surprise that I like Revelations 2. The plot isn't fantastic, but I remember it a lot more than the first. Larry is my favorite character in this one. Claire feels confusing, and nothing like her portrait in Resident Evil 2 Remake, which is obvious, but this was the only reference I had for Claire at this point. The other protagonists I'm not really a fan of. Natalia is just a normal child with special powers, which I guess makes her not a normal child, but she's just a gimmick in disguise, and Moira is just meh. I can appreciate how they handled her strained relationship with Barry, but Moira herself is not the most interesting character, and also, her gimmick sucks. Further, I like the areas on this game. The difficulty was decent to normal. It's harder than 5 and a lot harder than the original. It's still easy. I don't have many strong feelings about this one, but I consider it an improvement over the first. The puzzles are much better, for example, though also nothing special. It is indeed not a game that I am likely to replay it, but I at least felt something when playing this game. It's B, better than 6 even. It plays it safe a lot, and Resident Evil 6 doesn't. But I gotta say it's a more solid experience. I can't see it being better than 5 though. Talking about not being better than 5, well, that's not the case for this one. Resident Evil 4 2005 is a game I played more than 20 years after its launch, and almost 3 years after the remake. I still loved it. This game is incredibly chill, it has fun mechanics, and the gameplay loop is very addicting. It is full of cheese, goofy, and dumb dialogue. The story isn't a highlight, and it feels like nonsense. The characters aren't very deep, but I guess their goofiness, if that's even a word, gives them their character, and the areas sometimes are too video gamey. Hell, there's an area where there are fires splitting statues that you have to dodge while jumping through platforms. It's like a Mario game. All that said, it works very well. The gun upgrades add to the variety, and because of it, every gun feels like a decent option. It really is a revolutionary title that hasn't aged badly, especially on PC with RE4 HD and RE4 Twix. It's an easy S tier in my opinion. QTEs are trash though. It's a good thing that you can get rid of them using RE4 Twix. It takes a bit of getting used to on keyboard and mouse, but it stops feeling weird after a while. As I discussed in the remake section, I think the remake is better, even if this game is often more fun. It's just because of the story and characters being a lot more thought out on the newer version. As the remake is also an incredibly fun action title with great mechanics, like the original, I have to give it the edge. Survival horror is a genre defined by Resident Evil. RE7 attempted to revitalize that aspect of the franchise, and did so. This game is horrifying. It feels stupid, but I had to keep reminding myself that this was a game and that I had nothing to fear at the starting sequence. I'm not a person that normally engages with horror media. Resident Evil is pretty much the only horror game series I gave the light of the day, and I don't watch horror movies. Movies don't work for me, as I can't immerse myself enough through that media to feel anything other than boredom. Hell, I don't really watch movies of any kind. As for horror games, I don't really like feeling powerless in games as they sort of turn into a movie experience to me. I like the interactive elements of games too much to like games where I don't have too many options. RE7 works very well for me, and it felt like a blast from start to finish. I liked every aspect of my first one. The guns, the mechanics, the puzzles, the areas and the story. This is an instant classic, and one of the best games ever made. With all that praise, I unfortunately have to place it on A, as I think that it's not very replayable. There are too many unskippable cutscenes and the game is a bit too linear after you know what to do for that. Replaying on Madhouse was great though. There are enough changes to items and even events, like Jack following you around, to feel fresh. I can only imagine how great this game is on VR. As a follow-up to RE7, this is a weird title. They dialed down the horror a lot, but you don't feel that at the start, especially on hardcore. The starting sequence feels tough as hell. After that though, it's more of an action shooter. Nothing wrong with that, and they did a great job with this game. The story is a bit flawed, mainly because they decided to use Chris as a plot device. The way he handles the situation makes no sense, and it's clear that they really wanted you to feel lost and confused, just as Ethan was supposed to. Still, I had a great time with RE8. I loved the exploration, the game is beautiful, and it really is a nod to RE4 in many regards. Sadly, in one aspect it doesn't do Resident Evil 4 justice is the guns. The guns aren't different enough. More often, they are just straight upgrades over the previous ones. And the lack of exclusive upgrades is a bit baffling because it would be a good way to counter that. Weirdly, you can unlock special upgrades to all guns by playing mercenaries, and that way each gun has more of a character, and it's a shame that that wasn't the case from the start. This game is very playable. The bosses are all unique and pretty cool fights. The horror is top-notch during House Beneviento, though that part is more of a glorified cutscene on replays. All in all, I can say that this deserves an A. It may not sound like it, but I had so much fun with this game, and to me, it really was is one of the best action Resident Evil games. There are flaws, but the experience is still incredible. I don't think it beats the original Resident Evil 4 though. The newest Resident Evil game is fantastic. Resident Evil 9 has a great narrative. The story keeps you engaged, the exploration is solid, and the guns are the best the series has seen, from a sound, visual, and mechanical perspective. The attention to detail is palpable. However, again, there is a lack of exclusive upgrades, and the guns just don't feel distinct enough. That is my biggest complaint with the game. Playing with both characters is properly handled. They are both great. I have to say that Grace was the highlight for me. It is a proper horror experience, and she is a fantastic character. Her reactions are appropriate, and it's weirdly refreshing seeing a normal, though capable and intelligent person handling a Resident Evil situation. The Care Center is now one of my favorite areas in gaming. I really like the story here. It feels a bit cheesy at times, like the 100th time we find a secret underground umbrella lab, and the fact that at the end of the game all ends well through the power of a panacea and Leon not shooting at vitals. But I don't know, I just love that. I like that Insanity is a lot more like Madhouse in Resident Evil 7. Changes a few things, but these changes are enough for a fresh and really difficult experience. Leon's campaign is also very cool, especially how they handled each character going through the same area at different times. But playing as Leon felt better in Resident Evil 4 Remake than in this entry. And Raccoon City just wasn't as cool as the Care Center, though I must say I liked it a lot anyways. The biggest flaw, once again, has to do with the guns being underwhelmingly similar. This and the fact that every run after the first kinda is a NG+, as you don't find any guns around anymore, while at the same time lacking a proper New Game Plus. It is a bit of a shame, really. It is an easy yes, anyways, and I can say regardless that this game is a much bigger hit than miss. The flaws are so fixable that I expect to see a mod fixing most of them, if not a patch. I played on Standard Classic and Insanity, and this game, much like Resident Evil 2, is a lot better when you have to carefully consider each save. I'll have it in between Resident Evil 4s. I decided to check the classic games, and as I mentioned at the start, I might still play the original Resident Evil one day. Now, Resident Evil 2 is a gem. I really liked the exploration, puzzles, and how well designed the areas are. The fact that the campaigns are different based on the order and some decisions also works very well. It was pretty easy, and I just don't think that this type of game can have an impactful horror experience in 2026. At least not to me. But that doesn't take away from the experience, as the survival elements are all on point. Even the graphics hold up well while using the RE Enhance mod. The gameplay takes a bit of getting used to, but it's very good. Despite the horrible voice acting, the story is engaging and I had a lot of fun reading through the files and solving the puzzles. This ranks very high, in my opinion. It's an easy A. I don't think it gets to S tier just because of as a modern gamer. I think I can't really play this game more than 4 times. I played through as Claire A and Leon B, and I will eventually play Leon A and Claire B. After that, I think that there won't be a lot more for me to see from this game. It's really solid, and I think it's not better than Resident Evil Remake, just because that game feels better out of the box on PC, and I don't think it needs mods. Much like RE2, I used RE Enhance in RE3 Nemesis. I played on hard mode. There is a lot to like about this title. There are many new mechanics like explosive barrels and objects, ammo crafting, decisions, randomization, and the dodge. Unfortunately, many like the dodge and randomizer are a bit hit or miss. Honestly, I barely used the dodge intentionally, as it felt very inconsistent. I'm sure that someone that has been playing this for 27 years has figured the mechanics out, but as a new player, it feels like a waste of time trying to rely on it. Comparing this to the remake is pretty easy. RE3 Nemesis is a much better game. The exploration is a lot more pleasant, it's less linear, and truly is a complete game. There are a few issues holding the game back, like the fact that the randomizer can sabotage you, depending a lot on RNG. Some puzzles are a bit bullshit, and as I mentioned, not all the mechanics are well implemented. As I only played it once, I can't judge how the decisions affect the game. The dodge is underwhelming, and the ammo crafting I think is the best in the series. I really liked having so many different combinations. All that said, I can't fault Resident Evil 3 Nemesis too much for the misses, as it misses while trying new things, and still ended up as a great game. I prefer Resident Evil 2, but I think that this one is better than Resident Evil 5. It goes on highest on B tier for me. A game I can judge for not trying any new things and basically just doing the same as previous games in a worse manner is the last one I'm going to talk about. I don't like Code Veronica. In fact, I hope I have never to play this game again. This is the only game without a PC port, and that adds to the issues. The game runs at 30 FPS, which is absolutely trash, and even ruins navigating the menus as the delay is absurd between button presses. The voice acting is horrible, honestly. That is only the case really for Alfred and Steve. Problem is, they are in most cutscenes and they ruin every single one they are in. I hate the door transitions, and this game has the longest ones in the series. To make it worse, backtracking is insane on this title. There is an elevator fetish going on, and the maps are too confusing and are bad at communicating where every elevator takes you. Graphics are really bad and look much worse than the previous two games using RE enhance. This game can soft lock you at many different points. The infamous Tyrant playing boss can do that even if you defeat him. If you don't have enough weapons stored, you will really have a bad time starting out as Chris. There are other times where the game shifts characters and locks you out of whatever guns you are carrying currently. There are many stupid enemies like the Bandersnatch, and the game has a bad habit of placing enemies in transitions where you can't see them. There are many button layouts, and they are all bad. The bosses are so bad, in fact, that most of them are optional. I could go on, but I think that you get the point. Code Veronica is very ambitious, it is really long, but the story is too goofy. It feels like a fever dream, and the areas aren't terribly interesting. My favorite part of the game was when I finished it. I'm sure the remake will be great, though. The only things I really liked were the guns and the soundtrack. I will give this game the D. I know some of these placements are going to be controversial. Maybe Resident Evil 5 deserves higher. Maybe I'm too harsh on Resident Evil 0. And looking back, I feel like Revelations deserves to be ahead of Resident Evil 3 remake. And, well, God forbid if Code Veronica is your favorite game. Let me know what you think about my list and what you would change about it.